There's nothing more important for your organization than the look and functionality of where your team spends most of their time. Here at Netting Pros and Stadionic, we create iconic facilities that exceed industry standards and become the headline of your organization. We've worked with dozens of the top leagues, collegiate programs, and professional baseball organizations.
We are here at Clemson University to build our second baseball field on a football field.
And having that partner with Netting Pros to be able to look at that and say, how can we make this happen that can be great for fans, great for the experience, and they nailed it.
We have customized solutions for whatever your needs may be to help every aspect of your project, bringing facilities to life.
You got to make sure that we're having the top premier product. We want the best for our guys.
Without great partnerships and collaboration with Netting Pros, we wouldn't be able to pull this off.
We're confident that your venue will stand above the rest and your vision for the future will be made into a reality.
All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Conversations. I'm your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. I want to say thanks to our good friends at Netting Pros and Stadionic who make this possible. Episode 2 for this fall of 2025. And I am super pumped up about this topic. We're going to talk about the 2012 Kent State run to Omaha. And, you know, there's so much to this. Obviously, like you follow it from the outside, but there's so many stories that you don't get to really know about that are happening on the inside. And I want to say, like, the Mid-American Conference, the MAC, just has incredible history in college sports. And that's not just baseball. Obviously, football was always called the cradle of coaches. And Kent State, of course, too. I think about, Thurman Munson and Steve Stone. And how about these last 6 coaches at Kent State? So you've got the Bob Morgan, who was legendary at IU, Bob Todd, Hall of Famer at Ohio State, then Danny Hall, then Rick Rembleck, then Scott Strickland, then now my man, Jeff Duncan, who we coached at Arizona State, former big leaguer. So, I think about Mike Schmidt playing at Ohio U, and this team, this 2012 team we're going to talk about at Kent State, they were the first team from the MAC to get to Omaha since the 1976 Eastern Michigan team, which of course was Bob Welch, who I got to coach with at Arizona State. And, how about winning 27 games in one big league season? And Bob Ochinko's on that team too. And, Danny Schmitz, who 30-year legendary career at Bowling Green. So, again, this is a league with tremendous history and in our sport, but Kent State has always been, at least as long as I follow college baseball, Kent State's been the flagship of the league. And just, I looked this up, you guys, 16 big leaguers from Kent State just in this century alone. Like, this is not some program that was famous in the 60s or 70s. Like that's like in the last 20 years. So let me introduce our guests and then we'll go from there. So first, I've got Mike Birkbeck, who we'll all call Berkey on this podcast. Berkey, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be your 30th year as the pitching coach at Kent State. So you got the job when you were 15. Congratulations on that. And this is a cool thing about, obviously, Berkey's got, if you follow college baseball, Berkey's reputation as one of the elite pitching coaches in college baseball, but also made 51 starts as a big leaguer. Berkey, you've been such a good pitching coach that your big league career is just getting shoved under the rug, which is good on you. But so Berkey's here. We've got Scott Daely, who was one of the assistant coaches on this team. Scott Daly played for a legend and Scott Pickler at Cypress Junior College, played at Wake Forest in the heyday, 9 seasons as an assistant at Kent State, 10 seasons at Georgia. Dale's one of these days, a big bullet point on your resume will be recruited Charlie Condon, among other big leaguers that you've recruited. And then, in the lower left, if you're watching, we've got Kyle Hallock, who's now the head coach at Bowling Green. But Kyle had a 4-year pitching career at Kent State, was outstanding there, was the 2011 MAC Pitcher of the Year. Cool part of Kyle's story was a 49th round pick as a junior, came back, and then that was the year he was the MAC Pitcher of the Year, ended up being a 10th rounder that year. So, we're going to talk about that 2012 Kent State team, but obviously Kyle's doing incredible things at Bowling Green. 24-6 in the MAC 2 years ago, won the league, 19 wins in the league last year. So again, we've definitely put Kyle in a tough spot here because we're going to be talking about one of his rivals in the league, but certainly Kyle's, his pitching career did take place at Kent State and was a huge piece of that whole run there. So Berkey, I'm going to start with you. Give us your origin story at Kent State. How did you get to be the pitching coach at Kent State?
Rose, it was one of those things where I answered a phone one time, and I had played in Japan in 1996, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my career at that point. I mean, I wanted to play, I just didn't want to get ready to play. And Rick Remblak was the head coach at Kent State at the time, and I had known Rem through pro ball, and I actually used to work out at Kent State in the off seasons. The field house was done in 90, so 90 to 95, that's where I went during the wintertime to work out. So I built somewhat of a relationship. Long story short, Rem called me in January of 97 and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm not much right now." And he said, "Well, my pitching coach just left to go into the private instructing industry. Would you be interested in coaching?" And I'm like, yeah. Well, he said, "Just come up and talk about it." So I went up, talked about it, decided I'd do it for a year just to kind of bridge the gap before I had to make a grown-up decision and do something else the rest of my life. And man, I loved it. And it's been just so full of gratitude for that phone call. It's just been a miracle.
That's awesome. And Berkey, you pitched at Akron, right?
I did.
Gotcha. And who was the coach at Akron at the time?
Dave Frost. Dave Frost, he's a legend. I mean, he was a really, really good player himself, but he had a legendary coaching career. He was there for a long time.
That's awesome. Love it. So all right. So Dales, you are not from Ohio. You are from Southern California. In fact, tell us how you ended up at Kent State.
So as you said, I ended up, playing at Cypress Junior College for Pick, and then made my way out to Wake Forest. When I got done playing in college, had some classes to finish up and wasn't sure really what I wanted to do. Obviously, I love baseball and being around it. So I started volunteering coaching at Wake for 2 seasons. And when we were playing Georgia Tech that year, Coach Strickland loves to tell a story that I was tipping all the pitches off of Mike Nickius. Mike Nickius was their catcher, and the way he's moving his feet was giving away all the pitches. So I'm verbling in all the pitches to our guys, and he's going nuts and he's losing his mind. So that's kind of where he, thought, hey, maybe if I get a job, I'll, look at hiring this guy. So that year, George Greer at Wake got let go. And so there's an opening at Wake Forest. And so they actually hire Rick Remblak from Kent to come to Wake Forest. He hires John Palmieri to be his assistant, who's a volunteer at Georgia Tech, who's a former teammate of mine at Wake. And then Strick goes to Kent and calls me up and takes me with him. So there's kind of a triangle of Georgia Tech, Kent, and Wake Forest kind of coaches moving around. And just fortunate that Strick gave me a chance. I think if that wouldn't have happened, I don't know what I would have done. It wouldn't have been in baseball. I was, going to go back home to California and try to find a job. So, it's just so hard to get a job in this industry. So many good coaches out there that, I was just lucky to get a break that Strick gave me a chance. And, really fortunate, especially to sit there at that time. Berkey already had a number of years in to share an office with him and learn so much from him over the years.
Love that. How about you, Kyle? You're an Ohio kid. Like, what were your options? And tell me how you landed at Kent.
Yeah, so prior to the way things are now, let's call them, back in the day, about 20 years ago, a lot of it was just kind of word of mouth. I had great models. I'm from the Sandusky area originally, so I grew up watching Brian and Michael Bixler. Brian went to Eastern, had a great career there, and then played in the big leagues. And then I saw the Snyder brothers from Bellevue, which is right next door. Ben and Brad Snyder, they went to Ball State. And Matt Maloney from Huron, who pitched in the big leagues as well. Went to Ole Miss out of a junior college and is now a scout. So I had the best thing my dad did was he took me to watch really good players. And he said, don't worry about watching the game. Watch those guys and watch how they interact, how they play, how they compete. And if you can do that right now at 12, 13, 14, you'll give yourself a chance being left-handed. So the recruiting process was was the whole Mid-American Conference, the majority of the Big Ten, and then some ACC schools in there too. And I was just about ready to commit to Kent State. My mom and I were talking about this story the other day, and I got a phone call from Danny Hall. and very unique one. I'll never forget right where I was at and the way he sold Georgia Tech. And one of the guys on the travel team I played on growing up a little bit was Derek Dietrich. So we were teammates from ages 10 to 13, and Derek was headed there. And it was the whole be his roommate, go pitch in Atlanta. And, you know, the most amusement I ever got really growing up outside of playing sports was Cedar Point. And I just didn't think I was ready for Atlanta as an 18-year-old kid. And Derek definitely was, obviously. He had a great career there. And Kent State was the perfect fit. I mean, Coach Strickland, you just believed everything he said in the recruiting process. Berkey's a difference maker. And at the time, we felt that program was the best in Ohio. And to go play baseball and extend my career professionally, I needed to be around the best that Ohio had to offer, and it was Kent State for sure.
Oh, that is so great. What month was the Georgia Tech phone call? Was this like it's November 10th and you're getting ready to sign an NLI, or this is like senior spring?
No, this would have been so junior year back then. July 1st was the date you could make phone calls. So I remember my mom. I probably woke up at like 9:30, and she's like, "You've got 10 phone calls on the landline from schools just calling you." They start calling at like 7:30 in the morning. She wrote it on a spiral notebook, all that stuff. And I got the call from Kent State. Was fortunately for me was one of many. But Strick and Berkey and Coach Daly, they all differentiated themselves, and they spoke things that were happening as facts, and they also spoke into existence what was going to happen, and they stated the future of the program right then and there in the spring of 2006. And they had the jewelry to back it up, they had the draft picks to back it up, and everything that they said we totally believed in. And we knew the guys they were recruiting too, because we picked up my future roommate Justin Gill for a tournament back in the day when we were like 14 years old, and I had never seen anything like that before. And we ended up being roommates. I hadn't thought about Canton, Ohio, where he was from, and he hadn't thought much about Sandusky, Ohio, where I was from. But after I committed, Strick said, "I got the best left-handed pitcher in the state. Now I got to go with the best right-handed pitcher in the state." And I said, "Who you got for that?" And he goes, "Justin Gill." I'm like, "Oh man!" And that's when I thought, I got to make sure I'm good enough to go there, because he was legit. He was really legit. So I was fortunate being left-handed, good grades, all the stuff that we're still looking at for kids now. Those things were in place. My parents were really good. And it made sense for them and to recruit me, and it made a lot of sense for us. And that was pretty much as complex as it got. It was a big time name in the college baseball world that a lot of people understood, and the rest of the nation was going to figure out about 5-6 years later.
That's awesome. The Berkey and Dales, you guys remember the July 1st things? I remember my first year in that role for Arizona State and being handed a list of 75 names on July 1st, and there's 6 or 7 kids that you really need to talk to, and then you're just hoping for voicemail. And this is no offense, but it's there was a lot of guys where you're like, "Please don't pick up the phone. I need to leave you a voicemail and express interest, and we need to move on with our day." But anyway, a little inside recruiting there. All right, so guys, here's the next question. So as you're alluding to, Kyle, there, it is. By the way, I want to get the numbers right. So Berkey will refer to Kyle as 5 and Dales as 3, right? On this, yeah, that's by the numbers. So it was an incredible run during this stretch. And the 2012 team, and if I say anything erroneous, I want you guys to correct me, but I think I have most of this right. The 2012 team was the end of this 6-year run, where I'm going to call it the bookend, where you guys had made the NCAA tournament 5 out of 6 times, which is so hard to do in a league like the MAC. You got to be perfect to pull that off. And then the 2012 team not only was 5 of 6, it was 4 straight.
Yeah.
And so, the first you guys go to the Mizzou, the Columbia Regional, and that's the one that Louisville wins famously. Dan McDonald's first year. You get eliminated by Miami, but it's 8-7 is that the score of that game. And I'm thinking that probably was a pretty important game for the belief for you guys. Like, hey, we almost beat the U. Then 2009, you go to the Tempe Regional. That's an Arizona State team that almost won the national title. You go 1-2 there. You beat Cal Poly. 2010, you go to UCLA's regional, and doesn't look like it went very well. UCLA was incredible, and so was UC Irvine was really good at that time, Mike Gillespie. 2011 was really interesting because you guys go to Austin, and you go 2-0 in the Texas regional and beat them 4-2 in 11 innings. Now they come back and get you guys twice, and they advance to Omaha. And then 2012 was we'll get to 2012. Here's my question, but don't feel handcuffed by my question. I really just want to know about like big occurrences in that era. But the way I'll frame the question is, what was the best team of those 6 teams? Like my gut is that
did Kyle set this up for you?
Well, because here's when I look it up, Dale, it's like Andrew Chafin is on the 2011 team. Travis Shaw is on the 2011 team. Kyle's on the 2011 team. By the way, Kyle gets MAC Pitcher of the Year over Andrew Chafin. Like, come on, Coach, AC, what are we doing there? You got outpitched. But so you go wherever you want with this, Berkey. But I'm wondering, like, if 2012 was the proverbial team after the team.
Man, I'll tell you, that 11 team was something else. And there's some dudes that you didn't mention. I mean, we had a closer, Kyle McMillan.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't want to fool with him. And
fourth rounder, right?
Yeah, 4th rounder. And Benny Klifshinsky. And the thing about Kyle McMillan now, he had 18, he was an All-American closer. And legitimately, had he not broken his hamate bone in the fall, he'd have probably hit 5-hole for us because he had major juice. And then we had Ben Klifshinsky out in right field roaming around, and just so many other guys. That team was loaded. That team, the 12 team would have had their hands full with that 11 team. When you run out Hallock, Chafin, and Starn, in the middle of that lineup being thick as thieves, it would have been interesting. Really interesting.
Well, Dale, take it from there. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you've seen it enough to where, unless you're just overwhelmingly talented, like, you have to get some breaks, and it's not luck. It's just, you have to get some breaks. And, like you said, the teams we ran into, the Arizona State, the UCLA, the Texas, those teams were loaded. I mean, those teams were really, really good. And the UCLA one, that was tough. I mean, they were crazy good, but we also struggled to get through our tournament. We have to win our tournament to get in. And we had guys that were just dog tired by the time we got to that. Right. So many things have to line up. If you lose a game in the MAC tournament, you end up playing 6-7 games, your pitching staff shot for a regional. So I think that was the biggest difference between 11 and 12 was, like you said, a little bit of belief, just kind of the buildup as far as, hey, we've been here before, we've been in these environments. And then also just catching some breaks about who we play and where we played in 12 that didn't happen the previous years.
Runes, just so you know, we went to 7 when we went to Missouri. We faced game 1, Aaron Crow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tough break too, yeah.
Yeah. Then we go to ASU in 9, I think it was Josh Spence, and then in 10, they were at UCLA, and what was that guy's name? Garrett Cole?
Yeah, he's all right. Gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're like,
and then Texas was Youngman, who was the coach of the year, who we beat that one. But I remember in 10 at UCLA, UCLA put it on us. Travis Shaw hits a ball in the first inning. We catch a break. We get 2 guys on. Travis Shaw smashes a ball. And, UCLA, the ball doesn't carry at night. The day before we hit BP and we're hitting balls on top of the batting cage, he hits a ball as well as anybody hit one the day before. And it doesn't go anywhere. The guy catches it on the track. It would have been a 3-0 lead. And we don't threaten the rest of the way. And I think it might be 10-1, 9-0, something like that. And they take Cole out in the 5th to maybe save them, for the championship game if they need him. And I'm sitting there thinking, listen, we're probably not winning this game, but this guy they're bringing in has thrown 6. He threw 6 innings on the year. They're bringing this guy in. I'm like, hey, let's chip away at this. Maybe we could get it to 9-5. You know, we're probably not going to win, but this fool comes out throwing like 95, 96 with a hammer and strikes. That's before people were throwing 95, right? Like that was pretty rare. And I'm going, this dude threw 6 innings for this team. And so, of course, he shut us down the rest of the way. But yeah, I mean, there were some breaks that happened in 12. The team obviously was really good and good enough to get there. But, you know, unless you're just rolling out superstars, it's all about matchups and, you know, where you play, who you play in order to get to Omaha.
Yeah. And I think you guys were a 3 seed in 2012,
yep,
which was probably
that's a big difference too. Yep.
You know, respect that you guys had earned over the course of those years. And it's, like you said, it's like that UCLA from 2010 to 2013, UCLA was just rolling. You know, they win the national title in 2013. You know, the Arizona State team, I mean, that's Mike Leake, Josh Spence, Jason Kipnis, Cole Calhoun. I mean, just, like sometimes it's tough. Kyle, what do you remember about the 2011 Austin Regional? Like talk me through that weekend where you guys go 2-0 and then you end up 2-2.
So the first thing I remember is doing the pre-regional press conference, and it's Ben, myself, and Coach Strickland. And Coach Strickland got the question posed to him by, I don't know which media outlet or whatever, but they asked him, you know, because Andrew Chafin pitched Friday, I pitched Saturday, and David Starn pitched Sunday. That was our rotation that year. And I enjoyed being on Saturday because I got to see the other team's lineup on Friday and understand like how I was going to pitch. And obviously different stuff than Chafin, but similar idea of, you know, you're watching body language, how they move from the on-deck circle to the batter's box, who's got confidence, who's making eye contact, all the stuff as you're charting, seeing what advantages you can get. So the pre-regional press conference goes, and I was going to pitch game 1 because we're a 3 seed that year against Texas State. And they had Kubica and Carson Smith and some of those guys that were pretty good, and they were the 2 seed. And Strick gets asked, why are you throwing off against Texas State? And Strick goes, you know, he kind of read off my resume a little bit. He's like, that's the MAC pitcher of the year. That's a future Hall of Famer. That's an All-American. We are not throwing off, and they are going to find that out tomorrow. And when he said that, I told Chafin, get ready because you got Texas tomorrow on Saturday night. Because this one's on, and it's going to be really on. So that's where it started. And then we got to the Texas game, and Chafin's out there. And there's a million scouts and however many cross checkers and whatever general managers were there to see him and Taylor Youngman. And Chafin and I played Legion baseball together. And the one thing Chafin had in spades was bulletproof confidence. Before he put it all together, he knew he was going to put it all together. Like even when I knew him when he was 81, 83 from the left side from Wakeman, Ohio. And just the Firelands Conference knew him. And there he is on the grand stage matching up against a top 15 pick, trying to pitch his way into being a top 30, 45 pick in Austin. And he strapped him. They didn't foul a ball off in the first inning. And he walked off the mound, and we knew this was our shot with him there to get to 2-0. And he did it. Bring in Gill, bring in McMillan to nail down the end. And we're 2-0. And we flash back to what Strick had always told us, starting in 2009. And the model for getting to Omaha from this program is going to be, if we can win a regional, we will be fine in the super regional because we can beat anyone in the country in a best of 3 series. We got to figure out the regional because the super regional, we can do that. And he ended up being right, obviously, like he is on a lot of things. And we're 2-0, and we're sitting there, and we got David Starn, and we're feeling really good. And Texas just came out with a really good game plan. The way they played was they played so hard for 1 run an inning. And it was unique to everything we had done. Like when we saw Arizona State, I'd never seen a team go first to third like that on every ball to the outfield. It was a track meet. It was unbelievable. UCLA similar, like the Pac-10, Pac-12, West Coast baseball, that's what it was. And so we had that, but what we didn't have was Texas gets a guy on. They're either bunting him over to second or they're stealing him to second, and then they're going to do the opposite to give him to third. And they're going to try to get one run 4 or 5 times. And in that ballpark, with the new bats they took a lot of juice out of the bats that year. They had that kind of figured out. So we're up 2-0. And they got us those next 2 games by playing that game pretty flawless. They built a lead, sat on it with the pitching and defense, and they got it done. Looking back on it, we didn't have conversations where we were like shocked to be in that position. I think we were more excited about being in that position. And then obviously, Lyon and Ryder and those guys the next year, they had been to 4 straight regionals, and they didn't know any different. Our joke about the 2008 season is we had one bad day. We lost the MAC championship game in 6 years in that run. So used to joke around in the locker room, and when May would roll around as players and kind of say, getting ready for the Kent State Invitational, which we meant the MAC tournament at that time during those years. Kind of fun to joke about back then. But, yep, that was the kind of confidence those guys were rolling with.
That's beautiful. Hey, let me ask you guys this question. By the way, Kyle, where did Chafin get drafted? Did he end up being like a 2nd or 3rd round pick?
1st round supplemental, 41st overall to the Diamondbacks. We were on the private jet home from the Austin Regional, and we were in the air when he got picked. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What about Starn? Did he get picked too? Was he a draft pick as well?
Yeah, the seventh round, I think, to the Braves after the 12th season. Yeah. After
the 12th season. Got it. Yeah. So, Berkey, let me bring this back to you. So, you guys were a known commodity at the time in college baseball. Not like, hey, people are predicting you guys are going to go to Omaha, but like if you're following college baseball, you know that Kent State's got an excellent program. But here's the question I think would be tougher to answer. Like, how would you describe, like the way Kyle was just describing Texas, they'll murder you for one run, like unbelievable at executing for one run at a time. And then they back that up with incredible, like suffocating pitching, Arizona State, UCLA, the athleticism, 1st to 3rd, etc. How would you describe your teams at that time? Because when I looked at the stats, there's really nothing there. Like you guys bunted, but never, like not a ton. Mm-hmm. You ran, but not a ton. There was a lot of doubles, but not a ton of home runs. Like, the pitching, I think the pitching was fairly famous, but you go first. I'm curious all 3 of you guys to answer this, but how would you describe kind of like the ethos or what kind of made you guys tick, Berkey?
Well, I'll tell you what, those guys were tough, man. They were gritty, and they were, and I'll give Scotty D a lot of this credit. They were really good baseball players. Mm-hmm. They were outstanding baseball players. They knew how to base run. They knew if there's a pop-up, you better run 2 steps through the catch. They took a lot of pride in defense. They played extremely hard on the defensive side as well. But they were just tough, man. And a lot of that, our practices were something special. I mean, it wasn't really an option. I mean, you were put in positions where you were almost he tried to get you to fail. He tried to get you to give up. And when things got tough in the game, it wasn't as tough as practice now. And Kyle can speak to that here in a minute. But just sound fundamental baseball players, really, really hard-nosed.
Love that. Dales, was Jimmy Ryder like, would he be the flagship of that, or would he be the book cover of that? Or is it sounds like you guys had 12 of him, except for not the MAC all-time hits leader.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jimmy was the best one, but I think he really personifies just what Berkey was saying as far as that was kind of our goal. Obviously the arms were the big part, right? Especially in 11 and 12. I mean, we were deep on the mound, but those starters would give you 6 or 7 every time out, and they were all good, Friday through Sunday, to where you didn't need a ton of guys. But the pitching staff always had arms. Position player wise, it was just about trying to find good baseball players. Because again, we're not, even though we had a good reputation and, at least around people in Ohio, we're not winning a lot of recruiting battles. If Ohio State still wanted a guy, they're going to get him. We had a chance with the arms just because of Berkey's reputation, right? Like Berkey does such a good job with the arms that if a high school pitcher in Ohio is smart enough to ask somebody, you ask a pro scout, you ask somebody, hey, where should I go? they'll probably say, hey, you really need to look at Kent State. So that gave us a shot with the arms. But position player wise, we're not winning battles between Ohio State, a lot of Big Ten schools, and even mid-major South. A lot of those kids want to go South. So if it was a mid-major going after him that maybe didn't win as much as us, a lot of times we didn't win those battles. So it was about finding guys that were good baseball players. You're probably not going to find a 6'5" runner. You're not going to find a guy that's hitting the ball 500 feet. Because we're not going to get that guy. Those tools are going to be recruited by somebody else and stand out enough to get recruited by somebody else that we're not going to win. So it was just about finding that guy that is the right fit for us. And then, like Berkey said, and Strick does a really good job of putting pressure on people in practice. So by the time 2012 rolls around and you got Ryder at short and you got David Lyon at catching, and Evan Campbell's in centers a junior, George Roberts a junior, guys that have been around for a long time. Man, those guys weren't sweating, playing Florida and Omaha or being in Oregon. Like they've been through it all before. And it's just a real calm feeling having those people at those positions. But to give you an idea about, like, at least position player wise, that 2012 team, I could be off on this, but to my knowledge, our starting 9 that we ran out there in Omaha, only 2 of them had Division I offers from other schools. Wow. So it's not even like they had offers from other MAC schools or this and that. If they had offers, they were D2 or they didn't have offers. So that's kind of the guy that we got, was just a good baseball player that flew under the radar because they were a step slow, didn't have a ton of power, whatever it might be.
Got it. Kyle, go ahead. What would you add to that as far as like how you would describe Kent State baseball at that time?
Yeah, I think one of the key elements to that is a lot of those guys came from winning programs. They won in high school. If you read their bios, the bios of the guys I played with, they're very similar. Multi-sport guys, high-achieving dudes. School came easy to them. So they could focus on baseball, right? And from the Ohio and Pennsylvania region, and enough feel and understanding that, hey, I'm playing against that dude. He's pretty good. They're going to Kent State. Like, I'd probably rather be in the same dugout than not in the same dugout like I am right now.
Right.
And I think the thing I realized while I was playing there was just our similarities in the natural chemistry. You didn't have to work to build the culture because the standard was set and established early on with how we practiced. And everyone had a similar upbringing. Our parents got along before and after the games, which made it easy for the players because, when we're not watching someone else's high school highlight tape, we're talking about that. And we all have just similar stories, I guess is the best way to put it. Anthony from Strongsville is similar to Brennan from Springfield, and Brad from Washington Courthouse, and Travis from Washington Courthouse. And we just had those types of dudes that understood each other, bonded by winning, similar upbringings. And I think that's what Berkey and D should get a lot of credit for. They sifted through that for the right fit for Kent State. And those type of personalities just start you ahead of the curve when it comes to, hey, I'm not just looking for talent or a big league breaking ball or, these type of tools. You got to fit the mold that's going to work here. And I think they really understood, obviously with Strick being an alum, they really understood what works at that university, what type of kid and what type of player will work in that university. And those are the separating factors. And those still work today.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, and Rubes, there's one other thing that I think I didn't realize at the time that is a disadvantage but an advantage at Kent State is kids don't go to Kent State because there's 100,000 people at a football game, or because the logo is going to be great when you tweet out that you committed there, or it's been your dream school. Like, it's not a dream school of very many kids. So the kids that decide to play baseball at Kent State, they're deciding that because they want to go play baseball. So you get a lot of kids, like Berkey said, that's what they do. That's what they live and breathe, is playing baseball, being part of the team, and trying to get the most out of their ability. And I think that it frustrates you when you lose a kid because they take a visit to a different place that's a little flashier. but at the end of the day, you get the right kids because of that.
Yeah, that's well said. Hey, let's fast forward to 2012, and feel free to backtrack on any of the stuff we've already talked about. But what I want to do, I'm gonna put the regular season and the regional together, and let's talk about that. Then we'll talk about the Super. Then we'll talk about the Omaha. And and Kyle, I want to get your thoughts on you're watching this from professional baseball. These are your boys, right? These are the guys you played with for 2 and 3 years. So I would classify the regular season for you guys in 2012 as rinse and repeat. Now, if there's a story there that I'm missing, I want to know it. But you go 24-3 in the MAC. You do the northern school thing. You spend the first 5 weeks of the season on the road, and as you're going to do, and then you won 21 in a row at one point, and then you got sent to the Gary, Indiana regional. Purdue wins the Big 12. Or the Big 10, I should say, and they are going to host a regional, but Alexander Field's not ready yet, so they're hosting it in Gary, Indiana. And I don't think we had squeeze play or bases loaded yet, but I do remember following that regional. And your first game in the regional, you play Kentucky, you beat them 7-6 in 21 innings. And I remember saying to someone, that's huge for Purdue because Kent State and Kentucky are now done. There's no way, especially as a mid-major, there's no way you can play a 21-inning game to start a regional where pitching's already a problem. You're done. Both teams are done. You've just played 2.5 games to go 1-0. Yep. Enjoy the swag, right? Purdue, here you go but of course you guys win that regional. So Berkey, go first. Anything that stands out from the regional or the regular season?
Well, Runes, I'll tell you, I'll be totally honest with you. We were about halfway through the regular season, and we were a little wobbly. We weren't playing well, and we actually went to Bowling Green, and we lost in extra innings the first game up there, and then we got boat raced in the second game, and Coach Strick gave them a pep talk, and then I'm gonna tell you something. That clubhouse, I don't know this to be a fact. Kyle can't help me out here, but I think there was a players only meeting or something that happened, and the power of the clubhouse when those dudes came together, it was over. I really can't explain what happened. I have something here I took off the back of the door of the locker room door that I found that summer that I think kind of explains, but that locker room got together. That team became, and they weren't like this. They became like that. And that's when and Scotty, you were there. Excuse me. That thing took off, man. But it was the guys. We didn't have to coach them much that second half of the regular season. They just decided we're gonna take this bull by the horns and we're gonna do this. It was fascinating.
Especially given how much leadership you lost from the 11 team, right? Those are some famous dudes that you lost off that team. I mean, that's Dales. Where would you go with that? Following up on what Berkey said, the regional, go for it.
Yeah, and you can look through that schedule, and you kind of alluded to it. Those first 5 weeks of the season are tough, man. Going on the road, we had some really tough road trips that weren't easy to navigate. And if you look at our record, it's, I think, 12-12 maybe at some point. Not outstanding. Fumble through, we kind of found our footing in the league. But even like that, like Berkey said, there's a little bit of a hiccup there in the middle. And they did. I think the team rallied around David Lyon, who's one of the leaders who, went through a little tough stretch there. And like Berkey said, after that, it was the coaches were just along for the ride. Those guys kind of took over. And like we talked before, I mean, obviously a talented team, but I would say they overachieved down the stretch for sure, just because they got some confidence, got rolling, played the right teams at the right time. And next thing you know, we're rattling off 20 in a row.
Was also, so you guys played 6 games on the way to Omaha, and you went 5-1. You guys had to go to a game 3 in the Super Regional. This is another crazy thing, which I didn't recall, but you guys probably did because you lived it. 5 of the 6 games were 1-run games. Mm-hmm. And that is not easy. And I know that era, like you alluded to, Kyle, like you were playing a lot more one-run games than the other eras of college baseball. But like for you, Berkey, I think I would imagine already going into a regional, you're stressed out about the pitching. When you go 21 innings in that game against Kentucky, like what happens then? Like, how did you guys have the pitching to get through that?
Well, Runes, what's crazy is because in that game, David Starr pitched 6 innings in that Kentucky game, and then we pitched our closers. Brian Clark, Josh Pierce, and Michael Clark were basically our back end of the bullpen inning or two guys. They were out there for, I think all of them went 4 innings that night. So that's what I mean about those guys were tough. I mean, they were pitching the 9th inning one time, then they went back out, not one more time. They didn't make a big deal out of it. And then that game against Purdue, we gave the ball to Ryan Boers.
Don't give it back.
We'll see you here in about 2.5, 3 hours, I hope. And he was lights out, man. He was a sinker slider dude, and when he was on, that ball was really slippery, and he was just dynamite that night. And that was a really good Purdue baseball team. And he just did a really nice job he didn't get flustered. He didn't let big innings happen. And then in the wings, we had Tyler Scalina, who ended up being a 3rd rounder in 13, who, again, when that dude was right, you weren't going to do much. And he was outstanding in that second Kentucky game. But I'll tell you what, Bruce, everything that we had practiced throughout those guys' careers, it came up in that regional. I mean, we won that game because of somebody on Kentucky hit a double, and we had a perfect double cut to throw the winning run. I think it was A.J. Reed. We threw him out.
It was
home plate. We had I think twice in that game, we had a 1-2-3. They had the bases loaded with 1 out and the winning run on 3rd. And I think twice there was like a 1-2-3 double play. It took absolute precision to turn those, but they were used to that.
I wish they had the coverage they do now, because that game was epic as far as the things that went back and forth, and that game was won and lost 50 times. But there aren't a lot of advantages to being in the MAC, but I think one advantage we did have when we got to that point was those guys were so used to playing a game with the season on the line, right? Like we don't get in a regional unless we win the MAC tournament. Your season's on the line all the way through the MAC tournament, all the way through the regional. So, and again, talking about the way things lined up, that year in Gary, the other 3 teams there had never been to a regional before. No player on their team had played in a regional before. And not that any team got there and looked nervous and made 5 errors and gave it away or anything like that. But I think just the experience, like Berkey said, those pitchers to run out there. And that 20-inning Kentucky game, I don't think the score was ever more than 1 run apart. I think we were down a run for a half inning, and then it was tied, up a run, tied, up a run, tied. Like it was that tight the whole way. And those guys were, the arms that were running out there, just such a fine line, right, of success and failure. But they're used to playing kind of with their season on the line, I think more so than the other teams we faced.
That's an awesome point. Hey, that I never thought of that, but that makes a ton of sense. Kyle, from your perspective, so I would imagine, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I'm going to try. I would imagine you're in pro ball now, right? And you're following your guys. When you see the Gary, Indiana draw, like you're probably thinking, man, where you been all my life, right? Like we went to UCLA, Arizona State, and Texas, and they're going to Gary, Indiana. No offense to Purdue and Kentucky. Like, so I'm curious what you thought of the draw, and then were you able to like follow the regional as was taking place?
Yes, very excited. Obviously, seeing the draw, and again, like back in those kind of days, it was, it was ACC, it was Pac-12, and we covered the guys that we had to go through, and in region, the travel wasn't tough. I'm not gonna say it wasn't tough, but it's something you're used to. A bus trip to Indiana, you make that to Ball State, and just really excited for him, and just really knew that the calmness that Berkey talks about with that era of player, and those guys specifically, those teammates of mine. You talk about playing with your season on the line. We practiced with our season on the line every day, and that's really. I know we're having some fun about that, but it was real. It was walking into a practice, understanding like these next 2 or 3 hours, while they're normal for us because none of us transferred and we didn't know any different. The further you get away from it, you realize how uncommon it actually was to demand a standard of excellence and perform like that. So when you're in those games with Kentucky, I would imagine, as we watched them and followed them, yeah, they're not sweating it. They're actually more comfortable in that because that's more normal for them to be in that spot, which was really cool. And that's the experience when we go back to alumni weekends. Those are the stories we tell. And some of those best stories come from practice. But yes, I was in Kissimmee, Florida, rehabbing my arm, and there were a couple other SEC guys down there at the time, and we were in the training room, and we're all stretching and we're talking about it. And I said, "You better keep an eye on that Purdue regional." They're like, "Oh, what do you mean this and that?" I'm like, "Exactly what I said. You better keep an eye on it." And I said, those guys, they got it. They are really good. They are really hot, and they're ready. I mean, just flashback to being up 2-0 in the regional the year before. That's the next step. You knock on the door long enough, it's gonna break down. And proud to call those guys my teammates. A lot of other era guys were, they know of them. They didn't know them like we got to know them. Obviously, sharing practices and lifts and all that stuff, and the college experience with one another, was just really rooting for them. And I think, the cool thing about Kent State and that alumni is everyone was rooting for them. The 92, 93 guys that were really good. The 01 guys that come back, and the 04 guys, and people have won games and done it. And they were the ones to carry the torch for all of us beforehand. And they did a great job. And obviously, the coaches had a big deal in that too. And the players followed suit, 100% buy-in with what they were looking to do.
Well, that's awesome. Very cool. All right, so let's fast forward to the Super Regional. You guys get sent to Eugene. George Horton coached Oregon team. I think Coach Horton's one of the best coaches I ever got to coach against. Just incredible, even-keeled. Obviously won a national title at Fullerton in 2004. So 3 one-run games. You guys beat Oregon 7-6. You lose 3-2. You win 3-2. It ends on that famous, Jimmy Ryder 2-strike, just gets bat on ball and hits a pop-up in a perfect triangle in left field. I think the shortstop for Oregon was J.J. Altobelli, who was in Sky. Now he's at Rice as an assistant coach. And, his dad, obviously, the late John Altobelli, just one of the best people in our sport ever, and just a Hall of Fame coach at Orange Coast Community College. And so, over in the Orange Empire League. But so Berkey, here's what just give me a like your biggest takeaway from the Super Regional, or like your biggest memory from that.
Well, I'll go back to what Scotty was. Well, I don't know, maybe it was Kyle, but we knew Oregon played West Coast baseball, and if we didn't start rallies for them, they were going to bunt guys, they were going to move the runners around. And we just tried to stay. That was our goal. Stay away from the big inning. Don't do anything to help them, make them, get some doubles and some triples and whatnot. And there were some heroic moments, man. That catch Evan Campbell made to end game 1, unbelievable. Talking about a great teammate and a guy that did everything you asked him to do to help the team win. That was one kid that always did that. And then the guys did a really good job of just limiting opportunities. Brian Clark was huge as a freshman coming out of the bullpen, and then our starters did a nice job of just not letting the big inning blow up on us.
Dales, go ahead.
Yeah, man, that was, like you said, 3 one-run games. It was crazy. And again, a pretty good draw, a really good team. I think they might have been the 5 national seed. But I feel like it was a good draw for us because, again, they were set up pitching and defense. It was another big park, right? We didn't have a bunch of home run hitters. as another big park, just like Gary, Indiana was a big park, and that helped us there. And they really pitched it, but all their guys were right-handed pitchability guys. So it was a bunch of 89, 91 mile an hour guys that could really pitch. Now, a little better than what we saw on the MAC, but similar profile, right? If we would have had to play, I remember Arkansas, I think, had Stenick that year, and he's throwing 94, 95 again, back when 94, 95 was a big deal. Man, that would have been a tough matchup for us. But drawing a bunch of pitchability guys and a pitcher's ballpark, I think, was a great setup for us. But a little different than Gary as far as the home field advantage. That place is loud. I mean, they don't have 10,000 people there, but it is really loud. And I remember a couple of times, Berkey mentioned Brian Clark. I remember Brian Clark's on the mound. I think it's a one-run game. And they played on the video board, they played this disco chicken, right? The stupidest thing you've ever seen. It's a chicken dancing on a disco floor with the colors going, changing, right? And it's doing its dance thing. And they did it once a game, each game. And every time the crowd went absolutely berserk. And I remember watching Brian Clark, our freshman left-hander, out there warming up. And I'm going, this could be bad. Like, this could be really bad. And it's funny, Berkey mentioned we can't help them. And that game one was very uncharacteristic. David Starn really struggled. And I think we might have walked. I didn't realize it until after the game. We might have walked 9 or 10 that game and somehow found a way to win. Yeah. But yeah, just so many big moments. And, like Coach said, Evan Campbell, he actually, the catch he made to end game one with the bases loaded up one was Altobelli was hitting. And, I remember it just the way I think about it in a situation like that is, hey, I'd rather get beat with a double off the wall than a bloop base hit. So, Altobelli comes up and I'm telling Evan Campbell, hey, come in. We want to get beat by the bloop. And Altobelli just smashes this ball in the gap, and my heart just falls, right? You're just like, oh. The one thing you don't want to do as a coach is put yourself in a position to where you're the reason why we lose. And Evan Campbell takes a great route and lays out, diving catch, outstretched with the bases loaded to win game one. And the whole series was like that. Like you said, 3 run games. I mean, it was nuts. And Sherfy was their closer who Jimmy got the hit off of in game 3. And he pitched all 3 games, but maybe only threw 15 pitches here, 15 pitches there. But he warmed up from 7th inning on because he was their guy. So I'm watching him in the bullpen, and he's getting hot in the 7th. He's getting hot in the 8th, and finally pitches the 9th. Does the same thing the next day. And if you watch the video, he actually got hurt on the pitch before Jimmy Ryder's hit. I don't know if you ever gone through and watched it. Yeah. But he gets hurt on that pitch before. And Coach Horton goes out there and they talk, whatever. He kind of does the lineup card. He looks at it. He looks at the freshman left-hander in the bullpen, right? That's warming up. And he looks down there and he's like, Jimmy, you good? And I guess Sherfy said he could go. And one of the reasons why Jimmy Ryder was so far in front of that ball was because Sherfy was hurt. And that breaking ball was about 10 miles an hour slower than any other breaking ball he'd thrown that game. Yep. So that's what got Jimmy Ryder so far out in front was Sherfy was just trying everything he can to get that ball over the plate. And sure enough, the ball finds turf and, guys are jumping around going crazy. But that pitch is 10 miles an hour slower than any other pitch he threw. And Derek Toadmine, who I love, is going back and tagging. I'm not sure why he's doing that. But sure enough.
Kyle, you remember where you were when you watched that?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Orlando, Florida. West Coast time. It was obviously late for the East Coast, and I stayed up a little later than my bedtime. But it was, the Evan Campbell catch in center field. Go back to the game reads you get in BP. Go back to pop-up communication. Go back to all the things. That mattered, that kids bought into, that was associated with winning. And the pitching staff having the toughness, the position players just being tough outs with 2 strikes and 2 outs. You go against those guys in practice, and they're like, man, they're running up my pitch count right now. I got to get this dude out quicker, and you can't because it's a one-on-one battle that you kind of realize at the time, but it's going to get talked about for the next 50 alumni days when you go back there. Alumni weekends at the golf outing. Hey, Hallock, you remember that two-strike? Or I'm sorry, Evan Campbell still to this day blows me up about an 0-0 pitch in a Blue Gold World Series that I threw him that he hit that he cheated to because he had to cheat to get to the fastball, Evan. And so he cheated to get to it, hits it for a double in the gap or triple in the gap to lead off a Blue Gold World Series game. And that's how much that stuff mattered, to those guys and how much pride they had. I'm going to say it for the world to hear it now. Coach D used to tell us, you need at least one guy on your roster from Southern California to go to Omaha.
That's a fact, Rooney.
And the good thing for the Golden Flashes was that he was from Southern California. We hop on the internet, right? And we're like, all the 8 teams in Omaha, yeah, they got someone from Southern. He's like, he's right. Like, he wasn't just messing with us. And so that was another reason. We always felt like those guys taught us pride, those guys being our coaches. Pride where you're from, pride in the logo you wear, and how you're representing, just anything and everything. But I was down in Orlando, Florida, again, in a tough time personally in my career, just rehabbing an injury. Like anyone that goes through the game, it's not fun to have it taken away from you. But if your alma mater is going to make a run to Omaha, that lifts your spirits up and gets you on the bus at 6 a.m. So,
amen. Yeah. Let's wrap with the trip to Omaha. So, I'm just always curious about this. Like I've never having been in the situation that you guys were in. Clearly, I'm picturing words like surreal. Like I can't even imagine the school's reaction, the alumni reaction. I think when you went 1-2 in Omaha, but two things that I think are really important to state are, Jason Bagoli, one of your players, a junior at the time, lost his mom when you guys were out there, which is, just this, unthinkable tragedy to have to work through, and, what that must have been like for you all and for him. And then, that was the year that Florida was the #1 team in the country. This was their 3rd straight Omaha. This is Mike Zunino, Hudson Randall, Jonathan Crawford, Brian Johnson. Like they were a monster. And so, you guys beat them. You beat Florida 5-4. That was the one win out there, which is, talk about an enormous program defining win. But yeah, go ahead wherever you want, Berkey, with this. But what are some big takeaways from the Omaha trip?
Well, Rose, our guys, see, we went from Oregon straight to Omaha. We didn't go back to Kent, if I remember right. We just because we played that Monday game, I believe, in Oregon.
Got it.
And our guys just showed up, man. They were businesslike. I mean, I'm sure they were excited. Joe Coke kept throwing all the BP ball. They give you a bucket of BP balls. Joe Coke kept throwing all the balls in the stands. He's running for mayor out there. But other than that, they were just very workmanlike. And it was interesting because the Florida game, again, it was like 110 degrees and everybody was making a big deal about, how we were going to handle the heat and whatnot. And ironically, I think Florida starter went out of the game in the first inning with
heat exhaustion.
Heat exhaustion. And Ryan Boers, man, I'm telling you, when he was on, that ball was going like that. And he just did a great job. And it got interesting in the 9th with some walks and whatnot. But our guys, I didn't feel like they felt overwhelmed at all. I really didn't.
Awesome. Go ahead, Dales.
Well, yeah, Hudson Randall leaving the game wasn't a great thing because they just brought Crawford in.
Yeah,
who just threw a no-hitter in the regional a couple weeks before.
Right.
But I think two things really stood out in Omaha, and this is the only time I've ever been to Omaha. Never been there as a fan or anything. So I don't know if this normally happens, but at least that year in 2012, your bus you took all around that took you all around town was your school colors, right? They said that wasn't on purpose. They were the school colors. Our bus was green and yellow. So there weren't a lot of people expecting the Flashes to be rolling around Omaha. They gave us the Oregon bus to roll around in.
Oh my gosh, no way. Oh,
yeah, no. They said no, that's not what it is. But the 7 other teams out there, they had their own colors for their bus. So,
oh no.
Yeah. So we were rolling around Oregon's bus out there in 12. But like Berkey said, that Florida game, my parents made the trip out there, and I remember talking to them, and I could be a little bit of a pessimist at times. So I'm telling my parents, like, man, we just need to keep it within 10. Like, I'm watching these guys on TV, and, Crawford's doing this at 98 miles. I'm like, this is going to be tough. And sure enough, we get out to a lead. We catch a couple breaks. Guys are swinging the bats well. Boers is absolutely shoving. But one thing to me that stands out, and this is why Berkey is so great, is that 9th inning. I think Michael Clark might have started that 9th inning, and he goes walk on 8 straight pitches. We're up 1, right? So we haven't thrown a strike yet, and it's 1st and 2nd. You're like, oh boy. Then we bring in Josh Pierce, and they bunt. There's 3-2, but he might have gone 3-0. He was at least 3-1 at one point. So we almost walk that guy. They get a bunt down at 2nd and 3rd. Pierce goes 2-0 to the next guy and hits him. So we're up 1, and we got bases loaded, and they haven't hit a ball more than 10 feet, right? And then I think Pierce might go 3-1 to the next guy with the base loaded. So at this point, we had the bases loaded and 1 out, and I think we've thrown 2 strikes in the inning, right? And it's just an absolute nightmare. And sure enough, Pierce goes punch out, pop up. But I remember it took me back to, I remember Berkey sending me out to go watch Josh Pierce throw in high school, right? It was in the spring. It probably was his junior year in the spring. And I think Berkey had already seen him throw, but he's just like, hey, you go see this guy, Josh Pierce. And I remember this because I'm driving this old Saturn, who's an alternator shot. So I had to leave my car running during the game, right? I couldn't turn my car off or else it wouldn't start when I got back in it. So I leave my car running in the parking lot, hope no one runs off with it. And I watched this cat pitch, and ups and downs, he's not playing against a particularly great team. And I get on the phone with Berkey after the game, and I'm like, Berkey, man, I don't know. I just watched this cat walk 10 guys, right? He walked 10 guys in a high school game. I'm not sure about this. And this is why it was so great for me to work with Berkey. It was his one question was, all right, how do you feel if we're playing Ohio University and they're up 1 and he's coming out of the bullpen? And I'm like, I didn't think about it like that's a good question. I'm like, well, I think we're definitely going to have a base runner, but I think it's going to be really, really tough to score, right? He's going to be really tough in that situation. It's just the way he looked at stuff and the way he phrased it, especially, I think at that time I wasn't so much a young coach anymore, but for me to challenge me to look at things in a different way when maybe I would have just wrote him off. And again, he was a pitcher, so Berkey would have made that decision. It wasn't like I was making the decision on the pitchers. If he liked him, he would get him. But he challenged me to look at stuff, a different way. And sure enough, Josh Pierce, he got the save at Oregon game 1, and we put him in that game, bases loaded, nobody out in the 9th. And I think he gave up 1, maybe a sac fly, and wiggled his way out of it. And then sure enough, we're up 1 against Florida, 1st and 2nd, nobody out in the 9th, and we throw him out there in Omaha, and he gets the job done again.
Yeah, one thing, Scotty, one thing I liked about Josh Pierce, I knew he was going to fight. Now, it might not be pretty,
Yes.
but he was going to fight you.
Yeah.
He sure did. It was hair-raising at times. Hey, Runes, one thing about Omaha that I remember, and Scotty, you'll remember this. After we beat Florida, we go back to the hotel.
Yeah.
And we get off the bus. We're going into the hotel. And I know there's rivalries around the country. The entire Florida State contingent is standing at the top of the escalators. I mean, I got to shake Mike Martin Sr.'s hand.
Yes.
It was unbelievable. You would have thought that we had won the World Series, but it was neat. So there's some interesting.
So cool.
We got a little bit of that when we were in Eugene as well, because that's when the Oregon program hadn't been there very long, and obviously Oregon State had the long run of being so good. When we were walking around Eugene, I can't tell you how many people stopped us. Hey, I went to Oregon State. You got to beat these guys, because baseball was kind of Oregon State's thing, and they didn't want Oregon making a run. It's just funny when you get into those rivalries, how many people become Kent State fans all of a sudden.
Yeah, so cool. Hey, Kyle, I want to have you wrap us. I have so many thoughts when I think of this from your perspective. Like you played there, now you're running a program that's on a great run. And I guess where my brain goes, and like you had teammates that were big leaguers from this group, but they weren't the guys that played in Omaha per se. And, I think about, it's not easy to do what Kent State has done in baseball. It's not easy to be that good for that long. But most of the programs that do that, they don't punctuate it with Omaha, right? They never get over that hump. So I'm just curious for you, like what your big takeaway on this is, because I would imagine it feels like, I remember when I got to interview you a couple years ago when you guys were having that great run in 24, and I didn't know your background from Kent State. I didn't, Andrew Chafin was more famous, honestly, because he was the big leaguer, right? And Travis Shaw, but like when I learned your background, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense that the guys from that era at Kent State are out doing great things. Obviously, when you look under the rocks, there's so many great stories on there. But so go wherever you want on that, Kyle. But man, what an era.
Well, I think, we start talking about like the connection, right? Like even the freshmen on that Omaha team, Berkey's son, John included, we hosted those guys on their visit. Like when they were seniors in high school, they came to Holly Park apartment number 323 and stayed the night with us, right? So their first real Kent State experience was in our apartment, and we're Josh Pierce. We hosted him on his visit. They're talking Pierce. He asked me about the weight room. Obviously, big, strong, physical dude. Wanted to know what we did in the weight room to throw hard, like he did. And some of that stuff's cool. And when I think about like the run, I'm texting TJ Sutton, get me another T-shirt. And that was kind of the thing I had with him. When they win the regional, okay, give me a T-shirt out in Oregon. Give me a T-shirt at the College World Series. I know Brennan Glass rode the bus from like Ohio out to Omaha, and he was just a fifth-year senior. That's just the level of commitment. And when you play in a program like that with that tradition, it's always going to be their favorite baseball team at any level, especially with the amount of success. And I just fortunate. My parents said it when I committed there, and we were able to say it, after the draft as a senior when we got it done the way we did it. If you can say you were good for Kent State, and Kent State can say they were good for you, then both parties did their job. And the reason I'm in coaching, at least half of it's on this call with Berkey and Daely. I talk to Coach Daly all the time, just to get better. And just to, like he said, think of things from a different lens. I was writing down our practice schedules, right? Understanding the verbiage and the lingo that was being presented to us. And I felt like I walked out there with 2 degrees, one in sport administration, which is what I studied, and the other in, college baseball and how to build a program and hopefully how to win it. And, it's really cool to be in the conference, to get to see Kent State play at least 3 times a year. It's also fun to go toe-to-toe with them and measure up where we're at. And, some of the things you may see some similar things that you saw back then, just in brown and orange and modernized, and it's because of them. And also Danny Schmitz, built a great program here, and a bunch of my Legion teammates came over here and won 2 regular season championships. And it's just cool because when you think about it, the best baseball people, they have just appreciate good baseball. Berkey, Coach D, Coach Strick, sometimes it's at your team's expense, but if the game is being played hard in the right way, you just want the game for the next generation to be played at the highest possible level that this next wave can play it at. And I think that's why I'm in the game, is to pass some of that down and learn where it is and where it's going to go. And, fortunate to have the support of a great university and a great alumni here at Bowling Green, and 2 very similar college towns and college baseball programs from where I sit based on personal experience. So can't thank Coach D and Coach Berkey enough, but also the guys in Omaha for going and getting it done and being the ones to get there, because a lot of those alumni are proud and they're legends for it. And we'll debate in about a week or so who the best team was when we all catch up.
Without the hot mics, yes.
And everyone will have their say.
Oh, so great.
Ruins, before we go, one thing that I need to say before we go about Coach Berkey and what he means to Kent State and the program as a whole, but especially that pitching staff. And I remember, again, like I said, we shared an office, and that first year I'm sitting next to him and I'm watching him fill out these pieces of paper. And I'm sure he still does it, because I don't think Berkey's changed a thing in the last 30 years. Day to day is the exact same. But, everybody, the big thing now for all these programs is to try to, try to make the kids feel appreciated, right? So you hand out T-shirts after a win, right? That, here's the player of the game or whatever it might be. Or I've seen teams, they slap a sticker on the wall, right, with the logo, and, hey, Kyle, you get to do it today, and everyone makes a big deal of it. Well, I'm sitting there and I'm, 25 or whatever, and I'm sitting next to Berkey, and he's filling out these little sheets that he'd give out to pitchers after they threw well, and it'd say no contest on it. And Berkey would put, 5 innings, 2 hits, 6 strikeouts, whatever, their line, right, on this white sheet of paper. And is that the one with the duck and the frog? Is that on there or no? What's on there? Is that what it is?
It's different. But it's,
whoa, he has changed it, Runes. So anyways, I'm looking at this white piece of paper, right, and I'm like, man, 18 to 22-year-olds, these cats are just crumpling this thing up and throwing it away, right? It's a piece of paper. Like, come on. And the thing I didn't realize at the time was it's not the piece of paper, right? It's the acknowledgement from the person who's giving it, right? And those pitchers respected Coach Berkey so much, and that piece of paper meant so much to him to get recognized and acknowledged from this person that I promise you there are 35 to 40-year-olds that still have this piece of paper, right? Yeah. Because of who gave it to them, right? And that's just what Berkey means to the program, right? And how much respect that the players have for him, for who he is and what he does for them.
Love that. Kyle, you still have yours, I'm sure. That's what you were showing us that?
We have a similar model just across the way. And it's exactly what Coach D said. It's the acknowledgement. It's the significance. And what we used to do in our apartment, Justin Gill and I, when we would get them, and we would just post them right on our bedroom door, right out there. And then it became a contest. And then, I'm like, you get 2 chances a week to get these. I said 3 or 4, dude. You got like you're the career appearances leader with 99 appearances. You got a record that's never going to be touched. And yeah, you got more than me. You're out there more than me. I'm out here once a week, and you're out here strapping people 2-3 times and being a legend that way. So it was awesome. It meant something. Everything has purpose, and you only get one chance to prove that you were places, as a group and individually. And I think that's one of the most important things we are responsible to pass on to the next generation is do some stuff. Like that 2012 team did, like the 2024 Falcons did, to let people know you were here. That's it.
That's awesome. Well said. Yeah, that's a perfect place to wrap it. I appreciate you guys doing this so much. I knew this would be a blast, and it was. I knew the time would fly by because, it is like the accomplishment is so loud, and it's why we watch sports, right? Like, of course, when the favorites win, those super teams are super fun too. But when something like this happens, like what was accomplished by Kent State baseball in 2012, it's why we watch sports. It's why the NCAA baseball tournament is so special. And as you kind of look closer, there's so many special people, like special people overall, special baseball people. Berkey, at the risk of embarrassing you, 30 years there, you're an institution. Everybody knows if you're in college baseball, you know who Mike Birkbeck is. Like, your reputation is national, even though you've chosen to, stay at Kent State your whole time. You could have gone a million different places because you're so well respected, and all you guys, everything you've accomplished in the game. And so Yeah, I knew this was going to be a blast, and man, what an incredible run. And it did not disappoint learning about it from the inside. So thank you guys very much for doing this. For the listeners, this is episode 2. We're going to do 9 of these this fall. Next week I'm going to have Shane Dennis and Brent Kimnitz, and we're going to talk about Wichita State baseball and the 1989 national champs. And I think, like, for northern programs, they kind of made a blueprint that other cold weather programs could follow. So I can't wait to hear those stories. And again, for my age group and my era, Wichita State, man, they were some bad dudes playing college baseball. Oh, so good. Gentlemen, thank you very much. For the listeners, we appreciate it. We will catch you next time on Sunday Night Conversations.